Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to replace the spark plugs and air filter element on this 2015 Ninja 650. We're going to start by taking off the seats and then removing the gas tank. Let's get started. Seats are off. Now, what I intend to do is to drain the gas tank. Technically speaking, you don't have to do that, but this gas tank is pretty full. It's going to be pretty heavy, and it's pretty easy just to pump the gas out of there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. This is the first time I've used this, so I'm curious to see if it works. And yeah, it seems to. So I'm just going to do that off camera. After the first few pumps, you can get a bit of a siphon action going, and it'll just drain by itself. So it's kind of handy. I guess I'm getting to the bottom of the tank here. You can see the bubbles coming. I'll try repositioning a bit to make sure I get as much as possible. That looks like it. So I've got the tank mostly empty, and what I'm going to do now is disconnect the battery, negative terminal for safety purposes. The manual says to leave the gas cap open to relieve pressure on the inside of the tank so there will be less spillage. And then we want to remove these two hoses. We've got tiny little clamps on them, should come off really easily. And then this bolt here. So I'm going to go and do all those things now. All right, battery's undone. These two hoses here have been removed. Just tuck them behind here for safekeeping. That bolt's been removed. And like I said before, the tank is left open. Next step I want to do is remove this. That was easy. And then this bolt. And this one here. And then we should be able to remove the plastic cover here where it says Ninja. I believe that's Velcroed on after the screws are removed. We're about to find out. Okay, removed. And as I thought, it is Velcroed on, but the Velcro isn't a lot. It's a little square on each side. And it comes off with just a little bit of force. It doesn't take a lot. I found that by pulling it in the middle and upwards and out, upwards and outwards, it just sort of popped off by itself without having to look too closely at the Velcro. Actually, you can see on that side that the Velcro stayed attached to the other piece of Velcro and came off of the inside of the cover. So that's too bad. I'm not sure how that's going to impact us later on. I'll try to stick it back on, but I'm not too hopeful. Anyways, the next thing to do is to remove these two bolts that hold on the gas tank. The manual says to make things a bit easier to remove this panel. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And it's held in by that one bolt, and I've already released the pins up here. Hopefully we'll just pull out. All right, so that panel's off and the access to these plugs here. If you lift up the tank, so this black one here is the one you want to disconnect, and it's connected to a bracket right now which supports it and makes it also really hard to disconnect from the tank. But if you squeeze this little tab, hopefully I can show you, you'll unlock it from the mount, slide right off, and then we can disconnect it. I'm going to go ahead and do that. So the trick to this is there's a little tab under here that you can just lift up, disengage the lock, and then it'll pull apart. The next step is to see if I can do this one-handed. Nope. Apologies for the angle, but if you can see that red connector with the white on it and the slot on the side, you're gonna have to insert a screwdriver into that slot and turn it to get that guy to disconnect. Congratulations, the hard part is done. At least I hope that was the hard part, because it was kind of tricky. Could be just because it's the first time I've done it. Anyway, this is the gas tank. There's still a little bit of gas left in it, but it wasn't too bad. Yeah, so the next step is to start taking some of this stuff out. I believe the first step is to remove the ECU, which doesn't look like it's going to be too hard to do. But I'll remove that and unplug it. ECU's gone. Next thing we want to do, disconnect this guy, remove the screw, remove that bracket, disconnect both of or remove both of these screws, and then remove this bracket, and then remove this rubber sheet. Now we want to remove this bolt, yeah, that's the one, and then this one in here. That will loosen this bracket, and then we can move the bracket out of the way. So I got that bracket loosened. It's really just to give you access to the screws, I think. There's one down in there. Here, so the next step is to remove all these screws from all the way around the edge. There's a bunch of them. Another one hiding down there, hiding in there, down in there, yeah. Right, so you're gonna go ahead and do that, and then we'll be able to remove this cover. All the screws are out. Cover seems to be nice and loose. This might take some wrangling because this wiring harness is really snug for one, and it's right on this little lip here. So this appears like it might be a two-hand job, so I will be right back. All right, the cover's off. There's your air filter assembly right here. Hold on by the screw down here. So let's go ahead and remove that. And here's your air intakes here, in case you hadn't seen those before. You can just barely see the light from the throttle in there. Anyways, let's remove that screw and remove the air filter. Here's my air filter off now. It's dirty. It's not horrible, I guess, but it's got 16,000 kilometers worth of life, and I've come this far, so I'm definitely going to replace it at this point. If you're here just for the replace air filter, then you're pretty much at the turnaround point. Put in your air filter it and then replace everything, and you're good to go. If you're here to do spark plugs, then keep watching. I thought I'd include this side-by-side comparison of the new versus the old. Definitely cleaner. All right, the next step is to get the air cleaner housing out of there so I can access the spark plugs. To do that, apparently I need to remove the left side fairing, so I'm going to do that. And it also says to remove, I believe, this guy as well, so I'll take a look at doing that. I found this next part pretty annoying. You do have to remove the left-hand side fairing in order to get at a hose in here. Hopefully you can see where I've undone the hose. Let me just try to make it a little more clear. All right, let me get some light on that now. There's the hose. Zoom in. And that's where it came from, the metal fitting right beside it. So that has to be undone. And then the next thing is to release the air filter housing clamp. So that's really hard to see. We struggle with this for a bit. He originally made it look like it was somewhere near here, and I guess it is, but it's super hard to see. Let me see if I can find it for you. Basically, it's behind that cable, coming from the top. I think you can see it there, sort of in the middle, behind that cable. It's not focusing on it. There, that's the one. And it says to loosen it as opposed to remove. So I'm just going to loosen it and then try to pull up the housing and see if it comes. So that seems to have done the trick. I loosened it a couple of turns. I didn't want to loosen it too much in case the damn thing came out and I never saw it again. But loosened it, gave this a tug. Feels pretty good. There's a couple hoses here. There's the one I disconnected at the bottom end. And then it looks like I could potentially unhook that one, but I don't think I'm going to need to. I'll just work at getting this housing out the rest of the way. Let me see, we got a hose over here. So disconnected this hose as well from here, just pulled right off. And then we can take this part off and set it aside and go on to the next. All right, the next step is to disconnect the coils and pull them out. You can see these two right here. And we should just be able to give these a yank. You'll see that they're pointed towards the center of the bike. The manual says to make sure when you put them back that you have them facing the same way. All right, that's out. Now just pull it out, it says. It'll be easy, they said. And it isn't too bad. Now there's my one hole, spark plug hole. There's the other one on the side. Let's get that one. Come on, there you go. That's it, there's number 2. And now take your spark plug socket and get in there. You can see I've got an extender on the ratchet here, which you need to be able to reach down far enough. Break the plug free. It doesn't take much effort. Loosen it, and then I've loosened enough that now I can do it by hand. And presto, there's my spark plug. Hooray, praise be. Let's take a look. It's dirty enough. 16,000 kilometers. I guess that's 10,000 miles. Let's go ahead and grab a new one. So you can see the old one and the new one. I'll leave it up to you to decide which is which. And then go ahead and get the sucker put in. I got the new plug loaded up in my socket with extension. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the hole. Let's see if I can do this without making a total mess of things. Now what I'm gonna do now is just turn very lightly and make sure I'm not cross-threading, because that would be bad. But it's feeling pretty good. I'll just keep going till it snugs up. All right, I'm ready to torque up. Got my torque wrench on there. It's set to 15 Newton meters, which isn't much. Let's give her a go. And try not to break anything. There you go, 15 Newton meters. Second was obviously the same as the first, so I've gone ahead and removed it and got the next one ready to go in. So let's go ahead and put that in. All right, both plugs have been torqued to 15 Newton meters. It's time to get the coils back in. Slide over the plug. You know what? I'm gonna put a little dielectric grease on this first. So like I said, I put a little dielectric grease in. Let's see if I can focus on it. On both of them. I've already got number 2 in there, but I'm going to put number 1 in now. So if you remember the housing clamp bolt, that's way down there. You can see it. The torque spec on that is 2 Newton meters, which isn't very much. So make sure you're using a proper torque wrench for that. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten that. Back up top, I've got the air filter installed now. Should have forgot to do that last time. I'm glad I didn't forget it before I put the gas tank back on. But the screw that holds that on is rated at 1.2 Newton meters, which is almost nothing. So don't overdo it. Here you can see I've got the airbox cover back on. The screws that go around the perimeter are 1.2 Newton meters. So again, very little. Don't overdo it. And we're done. I do regret not showing all the steps in reassembly, but I felt that I was kind of pressed for time as I needed to get this done. But I feel that if you're following with me to get the thing taken apart, then you should just be able to, maybe at worst case, watch the video backwards and figure out how to put her back together. Reach out to me if you need any help. One thing I wanted to say is this plastic cover here. You'll see, I should have shown you, you'll see there are 2 pins on it that go from the plastic into the metal to hold it down. So you want to make sure those are fed in, and these wings are somewhat flat before you tighten up the screws all together. Again, these are held down by Velcro, which has come off on this side, but it doesn't look too bad. I can address that in the future if need be. Anyways, thanks for watching the video, and I hope you learned something. Take it easy. Until next time.